Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm excited to be here with Brandon Sinkler. He is the president of Coastal Builders and Consultants. They're located in the beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. Brandon and his team, they focus on full residential rehabs. So really excited to have you on the show. Welcome to Builder Stories, Brandon.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So why don't you kick us off with just a little bit of background, who you are, how'd you get into construction, and tell us more about your company.
Yeah, so I took probably an unconditional route. I started out, I was a firefighter and paramedic. I did that for 15 years. And I also spent 4 years in the military. In 2017, I just kind of decided that I wanted to go a different route. I knew that there was maybe a little bit more out there and wanted a flexible schedule. Wanted to be able to kind of create more income. And I just decided to leave the fire service and public safety. And I started a company kind of on a whim. So my family has a heating and cooling business back in Green Bay, where I'm from. But I worked maybe a year or two with them, just kind of as a gopher out of high school, and never had any interest in doing anything to do with construction or anything like that. I always wanted to be a firefighter, and I thought I would do that for forever. But just a series of events, I decided I wanted to do something else. So I started a company. I started investing in 2017, flipping houses. And that's kind of how I got started.
That's awesome, man. Well, look, I appreciate your service. Thank you. Thank you very much for everything you've done for our country. And I mean, just being a firefighter as well, we actually have quite a few firefighters who I see they kind of start or, kind of on the side. I guess you guys have kind of, a couple days on, couple days off, and it sort of lets a lot of people build a side business. So I think we have quite a few in the community here, but it was that you just decided you wanted to go all in.
Yeah. That's true. A lot of, firefighters, they have side jobs and stuff like that. Some of them will start their own company. For me, I just decided, I had two little girls at the time at home. I wanted to create something a little bit more for them, just be more flexible scheduling and pick them up from school and stuff like that. The schedule, it sounds very glorious. You get a 24-hour shift and you get 2 days off. But a lot of it is recovery. That if you get to a busy station or something and you're running calls all night, that whole first 24 hours off is like recovery. And it's kind of getting back into a routine. And then the next day you are prepping to go back to work for another 24 hours. So it sounds great, but it kind of just takes a toll on a lot of people. And that, the 2016, 2017 timeframe was kind of the big boom of, like flipping houses and stuff like that. So just kind of saw everybody else doing it. And I thought, hey, I could probably do that too. So.
Yeah, no, that's, I'm always a big proponent of like, go all in on something, give it 110%, give it your all. If you want to do something great, you got to be all in on it. So I think it's definitely a good move. So you saw others investing in, in real estate and properties. I mean, like, tell us like, how did you kind of like find that first property or like make that decision? I mean, I got to believe that had to have been a little bit nerve wracking, to take that leap of faith.
Yeah, it was. It took a while. You really gotta, you gotta search. I remember going to, like auctions and stuff like that, county auctions, and not being very successful there in finding properties. You got to just kind of team up with, other realtors and stuff like that. And other, just networking is huge. Just finding something, running your numbers, just being sure of how you, assess them and the market and stuff like that. Sticking to a budget and, just going out there and making offers, and eventually one stuck. And I think we made a little money on it, but it's more or less just getting in. And that really kind of set the seed. From there, we did probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 more, over the next year or two. And it was fun. We did well through that time. Just then the market kind of changed a little bit. So kind of took a little bit of time off. And then in 2019, I was just kind of faced with an opportunity, kind of out of nowhere. Well, let me back up. So I while dealing with realtors and contractors and stuff, I decided I was just going to go get my own GC license at the time. So in 2019, I got licensed, and then kind of out of nowhere in 2020, 2021, a buddy kind of hit me up and said, "Hey, I have 4 properties that I want to rehab, and I'd like you to do the GC on." And I actually hadn't done anything with that license. It was only just to kind of have a knowledge of like what the guys and the contractors were telling me, and just kind of to see if they were BSing on stuff like that. So I didn't have any experience as a GC then, and just kind of rolled with the punches. Set a budget. It worked out for him, and we made it work, and we did those 4, and then we've done them maybe 50, 80, maybe 100 since then. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So early on, you were really kind of looking at it more from an investment, kind of maybe some sort of, distressed situation where you could come in, get a great deal and then just turn around and flip it. Like you weren't necessarily doing the rehab at that point, or were you maybe?
No. Yeah, no, I came into this with zero experience, zero funds or anything like that. Started from the rock bottom, and didn't have any experience doing that. Didn't I really just thought, you create a budget and everybody kind of just, you pay people to do work. And I learned very quickly that not everybody does what they're going to say they do. And things change and things come up. And just kind of through that process, I was like, well, I'm going to take out as many middlemen as I can. So in 2019, I got my GC license. 2021, I got my real estate license. And then 2023, I've got my builder's license in a couple states. So I haven't really done anything with that, but that's all kind of in the future, and we'll see where that goes. So
Nice. So when so you got your GC license, but you didn't necessarily kind of do too much with it, you said, until that opportunity came along in 2020, 2021. So like, what was it like those first, couple projects that you had to work on? I mean, I imagine you didn't have, too big of a bench of subs, trade partners to, to tap. I mean, how did you go find, the right people to do the work for you?
yeah, I had a connection with a really good carpenter that I used in the flipping world, and him and I just kind of teamed up, and he's a good dude. He's still with me today. He's like my A guy, and we just kind of talked about how this could be a good thing, and if he just kind of helped me out, and help me maybe with some pricing and stuff like that, and just get through that one, that there'd be more work and stuff like that. So but I didn't know anything. I remember creating my first scope of work, and I didn't have to do one, I had to do 4 at once. So it was really tough. But I learned at that early stage too, that it wasn't really, obviously we created business and stuff like that to make money, but at that point, it was more about building a relationship, and it's paid off a lot. So just from that one job, it led to basically my company still being in existence today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when
Yeah.
you think about, you know, pricing, and you think about kind of building out that scope of work, like, I mean, how did you, I mean, curious how you did it in the beginning and how has that shifted, today after doing, 100 of these, like, how did you sort of figure out how to price it early on and like, what What was that
Yeah.
like for you?
Uh, well, I guessed a lot. And, you always have the ability to check prices of materials and stuff like that. Um, so I depended on Lowe's, and Home Depot initially. I didn't use many suppliers. Actually, I didn't even really know, but a few of them existed. So, um, and then as far as pricing, like labor, I would go check it out, with my guy. He'd give me a price, and as long as whatever I sent to that first, client was above what my guy was telling me, I was okay. So it was really, trial and error. I mean, my biggest kind of motto is, I've kind of, failed to succeed, and you have to embrace failure, and at the end of the road is some success. So
What would you say were some of those biggest failures that, kind of those hardest lessons that you learned?
pricing, just pricing things out, realizing that, you know, as an investor, I always felt like, um, I had to be more fair than anything. That's kind of my whole thing still now today is, I started out as an investor. So I started out as, kind of the consumer, um, and needing prices. So before I send out prices, even today, like I make sure that I would pay that first. So I guess, just figuring out, what stuff actually costs. Some of the biggest problems were verbiage of like the scope of work and how it said, if I talked about trim and I was like, in the early days, it was, install 200 linear feet of trim or something like that in the house. Well, it can be, it could be worded in a bunch of different ways, but you could take it as, hey, I thought you were going to do trim of the whole house, or, like you talk about 200 linear feet. Um, it you're not going to do 200 linear feet and then not do the house. So it's like, you got to be careful how you word things, because everybody at the end of the, scope of work is thinking one thing, you're thinking another thing, and you got to just come together and be like, I get it. I'm in this for the long run. Let's just finish this out, and I can work on my contracts later. So
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree. I mean, it's sometimes it just takes kind of going through,
yeah,
a
it
couple of
really does.
those learning lessons, and as long
Yep.
as you don't lose the farm on that first one, and you can
Yeah.
kind of keep getting better and better. It certainly is an iterative process. Um,
Yeah, and you learn from everyone. Every job, even today, I have jobs going on right now that I'm learning from. And a lot of it is, I've listened to a bunch of these podcasts too, and a lot of guys talk about, and girls talk about educating, the client and the customer up front, and that really is a big deal, because as a contractor, you you're kind of, it's like a double-edged sword. You don't ever want to assume that they know things, but you also don't want to assume that they don't know things. Like you think they would come to you and say, hey, I want, this or this. And if they don't tell you that, then how would you know? And but at the same time, you probably should. We know, we're out here in the field. We know, you know, what a typical sink is, or a cabinet, or a appliance package. So we should probably ask. But sometimes you get into a little, you know, area there, I guess, where you just, you need to educate more. So
sure. And so, how would you describe your process today for, building out a scope of work, coming up with that, that price, things like that?
yeah. So initially, like I said, it was a lot of just shoot from the hip. It was a lot of, um, how can I be profitable in doing this? Um, and just a lot of it early on was, how can I get the job? Really, I mean, if I'm being honest, and today it's more, it's way more thorough, but you also have to like building a custom house is a lot easier, I think, than doing like a full rehab, because everything lines up, everything is in a drawing or a blueprint, and A lot of times with, some of these full rehabs, it's a homeowner who probably, maybe they have some drawings and stuff like that from an architect, but you know, if the architect like leaves off the HVAC or the electrical portion or something, then you got to kind of just figure it out. And so that's always a big thing too. Like, but it's a lot more thorough today. I feel like I've been through so many of these that I can walk into a house and probably, guess within probably like 5 or 10,000 what it's going to cost to redo the house or the bedroom or the bathroom just based off of what they're telling me. And usually it works out, pretty well. So it's more thorough today, but you still have to be open-minded and kind of, go with the punches a little bit.
Sure. So have you built out kind of a larger bench of, of subs, trade partners that you can use to do the work? And like, have you sort of figured out kind of what their production rates are and kind of what their cost is, and sort of, so you're able to, take all that into account when you're bidding on these jobs?
Yeah. So I try to bid my jobs, with using my A guy and his crew. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, I've heard mixed stories of you should ask for a budget or you shouldn't ask for a budget. Sometimes I will, because it really depends on not the quality of work that you're going to get, but it depends on who, for me, like who I'm going to get. Like I'm still able to do a job, whether it's, you know, $25,000 for a kitchen or if it's 80,000, but if it's 80,000, my A guy's probably going to get that job. So, but at the same time, if it's still the other crews, then, we're going to make sure that it gets done correctly and it looks good and the customer is happy. But, different jobs sometimes have different crews, and availability plays into that as well.
Yeah. So when you think about like your time, are you baking in, your time and your involvement in this project, or are you just kind of thinking, I know that I need to make X and profit on every job, and is it, how do you go about that?
Yeah, I've always kind of in my line items for scope of work, I've always kind of had an admin or a project management fee, I guess, if you will, which isn't really based off of anything other than, kind of what I thought it would, you know, be worth or valued at for me to go there, make the estimate, um, and just kind of my time in general. It's usually way under probably a percent. It's not like, it's probably not even 3% of the project or anything like that. But I've also added in like a pre-con cost as well, for any job. If it's like replacing windows, I'll add that in there. And I've also heard too, like a lot of people on here charge for estimates and stuff like that. And, I would love to do that. I kind of sort of do that when it makes sense. Like if it's just a homeowner or somebody who's kind of just sniffing out prices, and I kind of get there just looking for prices, then I'm probably going to charge them. But if it's somebody who I'm doing a big rehab for, and they're throwing me 3 or 4 other jobs, and I'm not going to charge them for that. I'll just go out there and, give them a price.
Sure. How many projects are you running at one time?
Um, we usually have, right around 1 or 2 full scale rehabs. And then we, have, 7 or 8 smaller jobs, window jobs, full bathroom jobs, kitchens, um, roofing jobs or stuff like that. So usually 1 or 2 good size, and then, there's about 6 to 8 other ones in there.
Yeah. And what's your team look like? Is it just you, or do you have other people on the team?
Yeah. So there's me, and then I have a project manager, full time. And I also have an office manager full time as well. And those are fairly new, like within the last month or two.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so I've, during this whole, business ownership, I've always been big on delegation. So that's really in order for me to have time, to myself and work on the business, more of just running around, driving down the interstate with my laptop in my lap and being on my phone and answering calls and stuff like that. So they kind of just give me a little time to breathe and just work on the systems and job shred for one. Like there's so many things in job shred that I haven't even touched yet, but it's amazing how much it's helped us grow, in the past few months. And there's so many other good features on there as well that I haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, I always tell people, I mean, you got to prioritize your implementation and focus on the things that are going to give you the immediate bang for your buck, and then as you grow and scale into it, you can add on those additional, other features there. I'm
Yeah,
curious though, like, when you've thought about this, like, I mean, again, it sounds like you kind of went alone for about 5 or so years,
I did. Yeah.
and then you decided, okay, like, in the last like month or so, like I need to hire a team and need some people, like what exactly, like how did you decide that you needed to do that, and like how did you pick who to hire first?
Yeah. So I did, I've always kind of had, like, um, independent contractors, helping me out and stuff like that here and there. But yeah, I've always kind of just gone on my own because, um, you just kind of, I like things done a certain way, first of all. But then also, um, you know, you got to add those people. You got to know who, what kind of skills they have. So it just kind of, it's always just kind of been me. And, it seemed to work. And also too, like, I'm a single father of two girls, and, it's always just kind of, it's a little bit scary to to put other people's, financial success and stuff like that in your hands. So up until recently, I've always just tried to keep a thin book, I guess you could say. But I'm also at a point where I have a lot of good systems in place, and especially with job tread too, like, it helps a lot. And I'm seeing, recently, where it's like just a full dive. Like, I'm just gonna go for it, and I need I need some help. So you gotta add some people. You can't do
Yeah,
everything yourself.
I mean, running, one to two full rehabs
Yeah,
plus, 7 to 8 others. I mean, that's a lot to juggle as a
yeah.
solo owner operator there. You're doing the estimating, the project management, coordinating with all the guys. I mean, like that
Buy
is a lot.
materials. Yeah, yeah. Buy
As
materials, making sure dumpsters are changed out. Like,
yep.
doing more estimates and stuff like that. Answering the phone calls when things go wrong and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a lot. So
Well, good for you for taking that, that leap of faith there to hire and start to recruit and build out your team, because I mean, a lot of people, I see them, they keep going down that path and they burn themselves out.
yeah,
Even though they're making money, it's working for them. It's like, that is so much stress, and that's such a grind,
yeah.
to have the weight of all of that on your shoulders and not be able to have that team and that support system around you. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's definitely a good move to, I mean, obviously you got to make sure that you can financially,
Hmm.
afford it, and kind of look at the cash flow, and
Yeah.
if things were to slow up or whatever, like, to know that, like, you're not going to immediately be in hot water. But like,
Yeah.
I think getting that project manager, I mean, that had to just like relieve so much stress off yourself.
It did. Yeah. It was, like, it was kind of, stressful, kind of taking everything off of me, where, I sent two sets of emails. I sent one to all of our subcontractors, and I was like, hey, these are the people you contact now. Like, I'm still here, but I, like, don't contact me unless you contact them first or there's an emergency. And then also to the homeowners too. Like, I was the same thing. I was like, I'm here, but these guys are here to, you know, they're essentially me there when I can't be. So, feel free to talk to them first. If there's any issues or anything like that, or any changes that need to come up, like, I'm always here. But yeah, it was a huge sigh of relief. And, it's just been so much less stressful having some
Yeah.
people there to help.
That's a great point, though. I mean, you do have to sort of redefine, what are the, the standard operating procedures. Who do you reach out to and when for what, and I think that was good that you made that clear to everyone, who they needed to call and who was their immediate point person, so that they didn't just keep falling back to old habits and going straight to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And just like you said, like, I was in the fire service for a long time, and SOPs, like you just mentioned, like, I literally went and created some SOPs. So, not only for people to know who to contact and stuff like that, but also for, to make sure that that project manager knew exactly what his role was, the office manager knew what her role was, and stuff like that.
Yeah. And what is the role for your office manager? Where did you sort of focus them first?
Yeah, so we I use a third party accounting firm, and they do kind of like all the books and stuff like that. And they'll give me like a monthly P&L and do my taxes and stuff like that. So her main focus is to answer messages, emails, phone, text, stuff like that. She also sends out like a lot of invoices and stuff that I approve, and just a lot of communication is mainly her thing. Just where when somebody wants to call and talk to somebody, they, she's kind of the first line of defense. And
Yeah.
even with like job tread, all of our communication goes through job tread. Ideally, some people do still call and text or email us, but I always, if it's me, I'm always on job tread communicating and sending out messages and emails and stuff on there. So that works amazing for that.
Awesome. How did you find your project manager, your office manager?
Um, I used Indeed,
Okay.
and luckily for both of these positions, unknowingly they actually were friends with mutual. We had mutual friends, so it was very good. And that's always been tough, is to trust somebody with doing what you want to have done. When you can't be there to see it and still have things rolling, like, if I need some time off or something, or even like this, like I know that things are going on outside, and they're rolling smoothly. So
Yeah. It's funny. I always kind of describe the chaos, and when I ran a construction company, I mean, it was just like we felt like we're constantly putting out fires.
yeah,
And I don't know if that plays well with a firefighter, because you're literally putting out fires. These are more figurative fires, but like it's that feeling of just constantly having to go from one issue to the next, and it's like it can be very overwhelming when you feel like nobody else can solve those problems but you.
yeah,
And so I think having that team in place, like you're starting to see now, I mean, it's such a relief.
yeah. And I mean, it does matter how much you prepare for those fires. Even little ones come up, and homeowners and clients are really good at finding or creating stuff like that you would never think about. Like one small little thing we were just talking about is we were doing some bathrooms at a job, and the trim comes to the end, and then the door, because we put new flooring in, so now the door trim, it's got a little tiny gap in there between the bottom of the trim and the floor. So like that wasn't even included in the scope of work, and it's kind of just a minor thing. So me and my project manager were just talking about it, and I was like, man, just like we're not going to charge them for something like that. It wasn't clearly defined, so I was like, let's just take care of it. But there's always something. There's always some little fire to put out, and it's very true.
Yeah. No, I think that's always a good move. I mean, I think there's a fine line between saying yes to everything, versus like, what does need to be a change order that truly is out of scope, that's going to require, additional cost and effort. But like when you can find those small wins, those easy wins where it's like, look, we're already out there.
Yeah,
This isn't really going to take much. It's like, man, I think a little bit of that goodwill goes a long way by helping them, just with the small little things that, could have gone one way or the other,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. And that goes a long way with clients and the homeowners too. Like I, I hate change orders, first of all. I just hate doing them, and usually I've kind of, up until maybe the last year or two, I've had a hard time saying no. So that's kind of another thing too, is just being able to say no to certain things. Also clearly defines what you should say yes to, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So yeah, it's always something though.
So I'm curious, you talked about kind of redefining those SOPs for the business. Like, what does your day-to-day role look like? Like, what do you see as your primary responsibilities, and kind of where do you, gravitate and want to focus on?
Yeah, so estimates obviously is something that I'm still doing, and invoicing, stuff like that. I'm really just kind of overseeing what what happens at the job sites. I'm still going to every job site every day, just putting eyes on it, just making sure that everything is getting done correctly. Um, sending out change orders and stuff like that. Um, the office manager, she'll help with that, but I still want to have my eyes on it and just make sure. And
Sure.
ultimately, it's up to me. So.
Do you have plans to keep hiring, and like who would that next hire be?
I don't have any plans to hire. I think I'm good with these two for a little while. It would be good eventually to bring on somebody to do some designing or help with, the selections and stuff like that. Just one of the things that always comes up is like layouts and designs and stuff like that for like kitchens and um, I have a pretty good sense of how things should be and how things will look good, but it'd be good to have somebody to just strictly deal with that and say, hey, here are the options.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm just a guy, so I don't, always know what everything
Yeah.
looks perfect.
Well, I think I see a lot of people who, they take that opportunity to partner with, designer, interior designer, architects, people who, one, they could, you can bring them into deals to sort of help
Mhm.
elevate the project, but two, they may also have other, potential customers for you that they can bring you to. And so can be a really nice, relationship there if you can kind of go find those people to network with and build that, kind of build that team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, networking is definitely one of the biggest, resources that we can use and establish. I mean, networking will take you from just being a chuck in the truck to, you know, that $5 or $10 million company, however you're looking for. Just
Yeah.
networking, getting out events, and just letting people know who you are and what you do.
Is that your primary lead source?
Word of mouth, yeah.
Word of mouth.
We're on Google now. Finally, it's been a little bit of a journey because I initially did it. I was going through the verification process, and it wanted me to verify, and then I accidentally created another one to like get through the verification thing or something. So it's been a long drawn out thing, but it's basically just word of mouth. I don't really have any plans to do a whole lot of advertising. I know a lot of people preach it and it's necessary, but um, I guess if I hire more people or things like that, I'll do some marketing or some advertising, but I don't really do a whole lot right now.
How much repeat business? Like, I mean, are you? I assume you're doing work for a lot of the same customers over and over.
Yeah, it's probably 25 50% repeat. We do use Yelp a little bit. That's kind of a good lead source. Maybe one out of like every 10 or 15 are a decent lead on there.
Yeah.
But people just seem to. We have a website, so people just seem to find us on social or the website, and that's kind of how we operate.
And are these like so? What percentage of your clients are still real estate investors who are basically flipping versus like their actual homeowners wanting to do something to their property?
Yeah, it's kind of reversed the last few years where we're probably at maybe 25 to 30% like investors and real estate people. And then a lot of it is, it's probably 75% homeowners now. But, some of it is like, you know, a, a, a real estate friend or something, knows somebody. So that, it's essentially for them, but it's for the homeowner. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of that as well.
How would you describe the differences working for, real estate investor versus the actual homeowner?
Yeah, good question. Real estate investors don't really have an opinion on a lot of things, which is good because um, for me, that's I like to kind of have that ability to, um, kind of act like an investor myself. I basically would renovate that house as if it were for me. So, they're usually pretty hands off most of the time. They just want to make sure things are getting done, guys are getting paid, and they're not overspending. Homeowners are a different breed. They are there. Um, you know, some of them like to watch over, the people working, and some of them just are kind of laid back and, hey, when, when do I owe you more money, or what's the selection that I need for, the lighting, or, you know, just stuff like that. But scheduling helps a lot with that too. But that's really, I mean, they're two different beasts, if you will.
I'm curious, do you find one of them to be more you know, budget conscious than the other?
Um, I think budget conscious are usually investors, um, but homeowners want the buck to go further, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I guess, for the investor, I mean, they want to make sure what they're putting into it, they're going to get a return,
yeah,
and so it's, for them, they can usually justify it, maybe a little bit easier than, the homeowners, like, they're willing to spend more to get what they want,
yeah,
but they definitely want to make sure they're getting what they want for the, for the right price.
yeah, definitely. And even with like price changes and things that come up, um, I've kind of dealt with it on both sides of the spectrum, where investors kind of, not that they don't care, but they just want to know how much it's going to cost. And then homeowners, usually they're actually they're a little more laid back with stuff like that. If you just talk to them and tell them, hey, like, we found this, or we opened the wall, we found this, and we should take care of this. A lot of them are more willing to just say, okay, yeah, I agree with that, thank you for bringing it to me, and go from there.
Yeah. How would you say that you differentiate yourself, when you're pitching to, either an investor or a homeowner, like, well, what is it that sort of helps them to choose you?
Well, I like to, you know kind of help them understand that, I've kind of been in their shoes, whether it's been an investor, trying to get through these projects, creating a budget, and also the same thing with, like, homeowners. We all own homes and stuff like that, so I try to put myself in their shoes, and just educate them as much as I possibly can, to let them know, hey, I'm not here to just take your money and do the job and walk away. Like, I'm trying to create a relationship. I want you to call, a year later, or tell your friend at the barbecue that, hey, they did work for us and they did a good job, so you should use them. And that's really the basis of kind of our business. So I really focus on more just building the relationship,
Yeah.
than really anything.
I love that, man. I think, when you go into a project, stating like, my goal is to earn your referral
Yeah,
and earn that, earn that 5-star review. And like, I think it really does set the tone for not only, you know, you and them. It's just like, we are here to do the best possible job that we can, and we want to be your partner here, not just on this project, but on all those future projects that you may have. And, it's so many opportunities, I think, get missed when people just kind of only think about the current project. And,
yeah,
when you're trying to decide, like, do I go that extra mile? Do I,
yeah,
bend over backwards to make this client, happy,
yeah.
and do what's right, that can earn you so many more jobs down the road. And, I think a lot of people sort of miss that, seeing the forest from the trees.
Yeah, for sure. And transparency is a lot of it too. Like, just like you said, just telling them, hey, like, I'm here to get you through this. I'm not here to just, show up, and this isn't just black and white. Like, there's obviously a contract and terms and scope of work and stuff, but at the end of the day, we're going to talk through this thing and get through it. So, that's really a big deal.
So how do you handle, I mean, there's always complications. There's always challenges that come up with construction. I mean, that's just a sure known fact that, when you're going to go in and you're going to remodel and gut something, do a rehab, like, there's a lot of unknowns that could just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
How do you handle those with those homeowners so that they don't, get spooked, get upset, get worried?
Yeah. So, part of what I did in the military was just kind of playing a lot of the devil's advocate, if you will. Like, put myself in their shoes, put myself in that situation. How would I deal with it? How would I like to deal with it? Just kind of being in the moment, but also thinking, like, things come up, and, you know, I, it's one of those things, like, I'm not gonna, you know, turn this little thing into a big deal. Like we're just going to get through this and talk through it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, little problems, big problems, they always come up. Doesn't matter how much you try to plan for them. They'll still come up, and you really just got to work together and get through it.
Yeah. What about when you have issues that come up, with your crews and how they're, showing up, or, how they're executing on the job? Like, how do you handle those?
Yeah, so you just have to you have to take more of a firm route with them. You have to be understanding as well, that things happen. In Charleston, the traffic is horrible. It's very overpopulated for as a city in general. So, timelines and schedules and stuff like that, they're really hard to stick to. And I try to be upfront with the homeowners and stuff too on like stuff like that. We're not like a service company. We're not going to be there at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's going to be, we'll be there on Tuesday to do this, and this is what we're going to accomplish. But with the guys, and the crews, you really, I learned early on that you have to be firm with them. You have to be, friendly and stuff like that, build rapport with them. But at the end of the day, like you should, you know, bring a pizza on a Friday or something that goes a long way. And, just letting them know that, you know, we're here to do this together. It's not just me and you, and you're going to, work for me. It's just building relationships is what
Yeah.
it is.
No, I
What
love
about
that.
it?
And I think that helps to have that kind of more, kind of open and honest communication,
Yeah.
that when you have that level of respect and they know that you genuinely care and appreciate them, but hey, I got to give you a little bit of
Yeah.
feedback, constructive criticism. I think you can sort of earn that right, when you treat them well.
Yeah. And that kind of, comes with like, pricing and stuff too. Like, sometimes you gotta, for me, I always, I try to do my best for the customer, not only because, like we talked about, it's going to go a long way, but sometimes you got to kind of, push back on pricing and stuff like that. And sometimes that happens. So,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we are, friendly and we are all friends, but hey, you still gotta, you know, you gotta be fair. And, sometimes they're not, and you gotta push back a little bit.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that you got your builder's license in multiple states. I'm curious what those states were, and what prompted you to do that? Like what are you thinking, like, maybe in the future? I mean, where do you want to take the business?
Well, Wisconsin, where I'm from, and then Florida, that's kind of like I guess a retirement plan, if you will. I'd love to just build houses down there and kind of, as my quote unquote, I guess, retirement plan. So, um, we're also licensed in Arkansas, and that was more of just a reciprocity thing, really. And just kind of the states where, I think maybe would benefit me, or maybe where I want to go to build some houses.
So you want to get into the new build side eventually?
Yeah. I've done a few where, yeah, I mean, I've built a few of them for me as a consumer, and there's been probably a handful that we've, as a contractor, we've almost kind of done a full rebuild. Maybe you like have a wall that you get to keep or something like that. But as far as new builds, I think that's probably the future of where we would like to go. I'll
Yeah,
always do the full rehabs just because I think it's kind of our niche, and it just comes natural. Like, I mean, not that it's easy, but that's just kind of what I know, and that's what's familiar. So.
so do you see yourself opening up like offices in these other states, and maybe kind of trying to get a similar type business and operation up and running in those states? Or
Yeah, I
is it
think
just
sort of. I think Florida would probably be the next move for us, just because we're so close. And I've talked to my guys about sending them down there to do some work and stuff like that. I haven't really thought about networking down there. I did get into Builders Association and stuff like that, but it's all kind of just a future plan. And things are cruising along here, so it's one of those things, like it's an idea, and then it's a future plan, but haven't really done a whole lot to make that move quite yet.
sure? Well, seems like you got something working right here,
Yeah.
in South Carolina. So, I think there's a lot of, opportunity kind of right within your existing structure that you can keep building out. And maybe it's kind of just that long-term dream there, be able to open up and build some homes in Florida. That
Yeah.
seems like a great aspiration, but keep doing the blocking and tackling right here in South Carolina.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, Charleston is a very old city. So if you can kind of figure out that old architecture and, and just find your niche and find your little area, in your community of clients and stuff like that, you can do pretty well. So, and I mean, there's tons of contractors here, but, a few of us do work together, and that helps a lot too.
Sure. So when you've got now, kind of three people, full-time employees on the team, you've got some of your crews, like how have you gone about, like do you guys have an office, or do you have a place where, you come together regularly to try to, to meet, to review, jobs, how you did, upcoming stuff? Like how do you go about sort of building that culture?
Yeah, so we lease an office in one of the suburbs of Charleston, and then we use JobTread. The office manager, project manager do daily logs, and that's kind of how we all collaborate and see what's going on. And then we also do a Friday afternoon call at noon, and just talk about what's happened in the week and what's coming up in the next week, stuff like that. Any issues that there are.
That's great.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious when you think back, I mean, obviously you've been doing this, real estate investing, getting into rehab, kind of like when you think back about, if you were to start over and kind of knowing what you know now, like what advice would you give to other people who, maybe in a similar situation, maybe thinking about, going out on their own, starting a business? I mean, it can be very overwhelming as
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? What do you wish you would have known back then that you know now that might help someone else?
I would say, create systems and follow those systems, stay consistent, do networking, and, really just kind of like I talked about earlier, like just embrace failure. It's going to happen. It doesn't matter how much you prepare for it. Like things are going to come up. There's going to be weird things that come up in business. I mean, when we start a company, nobody knows to, stuff for taxes. And then you need to, there's just a lot of things that come up that you couldn't have prepared for. And just, you got to kind of just roll with the punches, and consistency really is key though.
Yeah, and that's all great advice. And you mentioned that you had a bookkeeper earlier. You just kind of mentioned taxes again. I think it is really important that people do make sure they know how are you going to manage the books.
Yeah.
A lot of times, people you just aren't qualified, and you're not normally the right person to set up your books, do the bookkeeping, the day-to-day, to prepare yourself for taxes. I think that's where it makes total sense to find a partner, outsource that to an accountant, bookkeeping agency who can really, for very, nominal cost, can do that for you on an ongoing basis, instead of you trying to just figure it out on your own. Like it's about kind of finding the right, what are the right things for me to focus on, and what should I delegate to someone else, and finding the right partner to do that, I think can be huge. But I really, really love all this advice,
Yeah.
man. Brandon, you've done a great job. Obviously, you had a lot of background, and I think that seems to have played a role in helping you to build, very systematic, very methodical business, and how you're going about this,
Yeah.
seems to be working really well for you. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this. I think there's a lot of people out there that, hearing, what you've gone through and how you've done this
Yep.
will be very insightful for them. So, just appreciate the opportunity to be a fly on the wall, and to have JobTread helping you build your business in any way that, we can keep supporting you. We're all about it, because I love seeing successful entrepreneurs like you be able to achieve those dreams. And, may one day you'll be building a home for me as well in Florida.
Yeah,
And,
let's do it.
we can, we can go kick it on the beach,
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
enjoy that retirement life.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I appreciate having me on. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Brandon. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, Every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.